Melody is a well-studied and discussed topic, but I don't want you to need to know everything there is to know about melody to get started crafting your own melodies. So I selected a few tools you can use to come up with melodies and to think about your melodies, to help you think about them. If you're an experienced musician, you will be able to use these and add a new layer to your thinking about melody. But even as a beginner, you'll be able to use these tools and apply them immediately. By the way, there's construction going on outside. It's been going on this entire week. I cannot find a moment to record a video without this construction, so if you can hear it, I'm sorry. If you can't hear it, let's move on. So first of all, melody has a shape. There's melody shape. It can be an ascending melody or a descending melody. It can be a valley, or it can be a hill, or it can be a flat melody. Now, of course, those shapes are just an estimation of what the melody is doing, roughly speaking, you know? Now, an ascending melody is really good for a pre-chorus. Why? Because when the melody rises, the energy level of the song. And the pre-chorus is the section of the song that sets us up for the climactic chorus. Now, why do we want that? Not because it's a commercial pop song and we need to score a hit or something like that. That's not the point. You've got something you're trying to say. You've got something you're trying to communicate. And the core of your message, the actual thing you're trying to get across, that's your chorus. And you want your message to get across, because songwriting is communication, and a good song is clear communication, getting the message across clearly and deeply. How can melody help with that? Well, you can think about energy levels. A rising melody will rise in energy, so you can land on a climactic chorus. Energy rising, 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 chorus! You know, that's the idea. So one example of this is Unwritten by Natasha Bedingfield, where the pre-chorus goes, staring at the blank page before you, open up the dirty window, let the sun illuminate the words that you could not find, reaching for something in the distance, so close you can almost taste it, release your inner vision, hanging on this high note before the chorus starts, release your inner vision, feel the rain on your skin. Even the start of the chorus has this na note, na 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 na. This note that it targets, that it makes important, and that's the note that the pre-chorus is leading us towards, landing there to stop, chorus on the same note. So the energy is just brought from this low point up to a high point and kept there to smoothly transition over into the chorus. That's how an ascending melody can help. Now, why would you use a descending melody? Well, it starts on high energy and then it lowers. Well, why do you want things to lower in energy? Well, you don't. You don't really want to lower energy. But the second thing I want to teach you guys about is contrast. Contrast is incredibly important. Contrast is the reason your listener is willing to keep listening. Contrast is the reason a certain idea in your song gets highlighted. Contrast is the reason you know the chorus started. It's not the same as what we just heard. It's something new. There's contrast, okay? Now, a descending melody starts with high energy and then allows you to end on a lower energy, so you can start at a high place again and create contrast from the end of the descending melody to the start of the next descending melody. So that's one thing that can do. Now, hills and valleys just combine ascending and descending qualities. So what I mostly want to talk about now is the flat melody, because why would you do that? Why would you make a flat melody? Just na 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 na. Well, maybe to you, listener, it's already obvious, but many people won't think it's obvious. Why would you make a flat melody? How can that ever be successful? Well, think of Mr. Brightside by the Killers. Coming out of my cage and I've been doing just fine. Gotta get out because I want it all. So the fact that we're staying on one note, even though we're sort of expecting change, because you're not going to stay on that one note forever, right? You're so used to music changing and melodies changing and dancing around that the melody just staying flat is very weird. And there's this sort of tension that exists when you're not changing, even though you're expecting change. It's like, where's the change? Why isn't it coming? When are we finally going to break free from this note that we've been captivated by, I guess? So, what happens later on in the same song? Guess it's just the price I pay. And that little melody where we finally break free from this one note we've been stuck in for a long time, that's the melody everybody sings along. And by the way, I'm lying a little bit. In the pre-chorus the melody moves around as well, but whatever. The point is, a flat melody means that any note will be contrast. And the contrast will be stark. It will be a very strong and clear contrast because you stayed on one note the entire time for maybe like half a minute, a full minute, just this one note. So when you finally sing this other note, it just really captures your attention, you know? It's a big contrast. So that's one reason to use a flat melody. But there's more we can say about contrast. So give me a second while I want to show you something. Okay, now watch this. This is a circle. It's not the most clearly lined circle. It's more kind of a messy potato-like circle, but it's a circle nonetheless. Now what kind of contrast do we get if we contrast this with an unclear square? Now if you want to create contrast, I would say this is not contrasting all that well. Let's see if we can do better. So, my first idea was a circle. Now I'm going to make a proper circle. And these are not even the best circles that could be made, but it's what we've got right now. How about we contrast this with a proper square? Now, there's an actual contrast. This is contrasting each other, okay? Now, what does this have to do with music? Well, if you want to create contrast between your verse and your chorus, or the first part of your solo or the last part of your solo, create contrast between those sections, make sure you use clear ideas. So if you're going for an ascending melody, then ascend, really ascend. So that if you choose to descend later on, it's going to be a very big difference. It's going to be a dramatic change in direction, okay? If you're going for a flat melody, then stay flat, really stay flat. You can use this one note below the note you're targeting every now and then, or the note above, but don't make it too crazy, because the second you're going to move out of this, it's going to create a lot of contrast. Now that doesn't mean your song has to be simple. It means one idea within your song should be simple if you want to create a stark contrast with another idea. Okay, how do I go about this when I'm actually writing a song? So, if you're actually writing a song, just come up with anything. Whatever's inside of you that wants to come out, just get it on paper or on your PC or whatever you do, but just get it out. Then look at what you did and decide how you're going to create contrast on that. You don't need to decide, at least you don't always need to decide. Sometimes you just feel that you came up with a verse and it wants to go to a chorus, and that chorus wants to start in sort of this and this way. Sometimes you feel those things, but what are you going to do if you're lost? You can't just wait for inspiration and then write, because then you're going to write like 3 songs a year. You can just sit down and write today. And if you're going to do that, you can train yourself in creating contrast. So there are many ways you could create contrast. Melody shape is one of them. But you could think about the length of a melodic phrase. Using short phrases, contrast it with long phrases. I'm thinking of A-Team by Ed Sheeran. So you got white lips, pale face, breathing in the snowflakes, burnt lungs, sour taste. Contrasted with, but they say she's in the class A-Team, stuck in her daydream, been this way since 18. I don't know, I can't remember the lyrics, but you got these short little stabs of notes, da-da, 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 contrasted with this long line, na 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 na. It's a very clear contrast in phrase length. Now you can also create contrast by starting your melody at a different moment in the measure. So if your melody always starts on the 1, so let's say we got 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm singing a melody, and I'm singing a simple melody. Okay, gonna contrast it. But this is different. I'm starting on the 2, this is starting on the 1. Okay, that's a really simple childish example, but starting on a different moment creates a different feeling for that melody. And if you're always starting on the 1, suddenly starting on the 2, or the 3, or the 4, or the 2 and, or the 3 and or any other moment than the 1 is going to feel different. Because the 1 is the rhythmic most stable moment within your measure, and every other moment is going to have a different feeling. And that first note is very important as a defining characteristic for this melody. So that's a good way to create contrast as well. And then there's note choice. And I like to combine this with the idea of rising energy levels. And I came across this device called the 3-5-1 device, where you start your verse or center the melody of your verse around the third of the key in the verse. So in the key of C, you would have C, D, E. So here would be your verse just about. Trying to come up with something. This would be your verse just about. Okay, some kind of melody that's around there. And then we go to the pre-chorus, starting on the 5, or centering around the 5, making the 5 a very important note within the melody. This is 3, 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, 5, 6, 5, 5, 4, 3. So I made the 5 a bit more important there to create a pre-chorus-like feeling. 3, 4, 5, 6, 5, 5, 4, 5. Going to the chorus on the 1, even higher, and we go to 5, 6, 1, then 6, 5, 1, 7, 6, 5, 3. Descending melody. 1, 7, 6, 5, 1, 7, 6, 5, 3. I'm just trying to come up with some improvised example for this, but the point is, the third is an interesting note. So if we're comparing the tonic, the third, and the fifth, the third is the least stable note, the most colorful note that adds the most tension or color to a chord. And centering your melody around the third makes the melody a bit more interesting, which is good in the verse because it's the verse. It's not the climactic chorus, it's the section of the song that your listener will hear early on and that needs to interest them enough to keep listening and to listen to what you're saying. So starting that on the third, that works wonders. There's no real reason, as far as I can see, to go for the fifth in the pre-chorus, aside from it being higher than the third and it being a good note to jump up to the octave or to the tonic just higher up. Because what we really want is to start the chorus on the tonic, because that's a feeling of coming home and therefore a feeling of climax. And what we're doing while we're doing all of this, while the energy level is rising, going from 3 to 5 to 1, while we're doing that, we're also creating contrast with these different colors that these notes bring with them, these different sort of feelings that they have. And so we're creating contrast, we're using rising energy levels, so we could create more contrast by also changing melody shape. I wasn't very conscious of this a second ago, but that's a great way to create even more contrast. And then, to send you guys home with a few more extras, consider the moment in the measure where you're starting, but also consider the moment in the measure where you're ending. And phrase length. Of course, those three things have to do with each other, but changing up the start of the melody will help you create contrast. So think about clear ideas here. If you're going to start your melody on the 2, start it on the 2. Every darn time, because that's a very clear idea. And as soon as you change that idea into starting on the 3 and, it's going to feel very different. But if you tell yourself, I'm going to start my melody on the 2-ish, and then one time it starts on 1 and another time it starts on 2 and, then you get this contrast. Potato-ish circles and the potato-ish square. We don't want that. If you're going to create contrast, choose clear ideas and you will have a clear contrast. So, when does the melody start? When does the melody end? The length of the melody, the shape of the melody, note choice within the melody, energy levels are something to keep in mind when thinking of coming up with a melody or trying to create contrast with a melody you already came up with. And then as a little bonus, there's the rhythms you're using. So if you're going to use a melody that uses a lot of quarter notes, right? So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, da, 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 da. That's all quarter notes. Contrasting that, we could choose any other rhythm. But if we go for eighth notes, that would be different. And it would work and it would be a contrast. But I think the contrast could be bigger. because we're still using the same quarter notes, but we're just adding a note in between. So we're still using those same moments. Maybe we can change it up completely by going for, say, the second and the fourth 16th instead of the first and the third 16th, which is what 2 eighth notes are. I'm probably going to get this on the screen somewhere. Either way, let's see what that contrast sounds like. Da, 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 da. Okay, I think that was clear enough. If you actively choose to use one rhythm that's very different and you're really using it in your melodies, again, clear ideas create clear contrast, then you're going to get a lot of contrast. If you're new to this and this was a lot, think of this one thing: create contrast, and then try and be creative about the ways in which you try and create contrast. And remember the idea of clear ideas, the potato-like shapes and the clear shapes. Try and create contrast. And I hope you guys were helped. See you guys next time.